Human design is form knowledge. It's knowledge of the form. And it's knowledge from the form principle. The form is the body, it's the material world. The form is the physical. And human design is unique in that it is a mystical system. It is a revealed knowledge, a revealed mystical system that came through a mystical experience. And yet, unlike the vast majority of mysticisms, it is not from the mind. It is not personality knowledge. It's not yang. If you go back to the original notion of yin and yang from ancient Chinese philosophy, from Taoism, from 600 BC, you get this idea that yin and yang are the two fundamental principles. And yin is the receptive, the earth, the material, the body. And yang is the active principle, the fiery, the spirit, the mental. In Greek mythology, perhaps yin can be equated with eros, and yang is logos, where we get the term logic from. It's the mind, it's the mental principle, it's the active principle. And so human design has a lot for your mind to chew on. I mean, it's amazing how rich and deep it is as a system. And the mind can really enjoy all the patterns and all of the stories and the anecdotes and all of the mysteries. And human design is a rich feast for the mind, but it is not yang knowledge, it is yin knowledge. So what does this mean? Well, quite simply, that it's there for your body. It's there for your form. It's there so that your form is healthier. Your form meets less resistance moving through the world. It's there so that your mind can give up control, can give up its decision-making power, and let the form direct its own trajectory. Let the form use its own internal homing mechanism, its internal compass, to direct what decisions you make and thus where you go in this life. So, depending on your type, you have different internal mechanisms. You have different wiring or different mechanics, so to speak, and there are different mechanical processes. So for a generator, how are they going to make decisions? They're going to make decisions sacrally. And it's form knowledge because it's trusting the form to make that decision. The mind has a purpose, but the purpose of the mind is to convey information, to be outer authority. But the mind does double duty, and it takes control of the form, and it tries to be the inner authority, but it's not. The mind is meant to be outer authority. That's what I'm doing right now, is sharing my outer authority. I'm sharing my knowledge and the information that I have, and I'm conveying it. But to make a decision, I trust my inner authority, my sacral, because I'm a generator. I'm a sacral generator. So someone asks me, do you want to do this reading? And I go, then I'll do it. But if they ask me, do you want to do this reading? And I go, yeah, that sounds good. Then I'll notice that my tone of voice shifted, my body tensed up. I was hesitant. I shrinked from it. It felt like it would be a drag. It didn't energize me. I didn't feel galvanized or excited. I'm not looking forward to it. I start to dread it. Hey, do you want to go see that movie on Friday? Great. What about that other movie on Saturday? Yeah, I don't know. That means no. That means no, right? And so, similarly, do you want to see that movie? That means no. But if I'm like, no, I don't think I want to see that. Like, no. It's like a fake no. So being a generator, my journey has been to discern what are my false positives and false negatives. It's like someone's teasing you. You really like that person, don't you? And you're like, no. but it's actually, I do. Or, so this is how it works for generators. So my own path, I first encountered human design in 2006. It took 9 years for me to actually go beyond the surface of it. And so I consider my quote-unquote experiment starting in 2015. That's when it started, because that's when I had my own sacral kind of initiation experience. Actually, even summer of 2016. I had my first full reading in 2015. Spent about 4 hours sinking in and sitting with all this information. And then it wasn't until about 9 months later that I had what I describe as a Sacral Awakening experience, where suddenly, loud and clear, every decision in my life, every yes or no question anyone asked, I immediately had this I knew which one it was. And so that's what it's really about. It's yin knowledge, it's form knowledge, which is about knowing, coming to know your unconscious desire, knowing what your body wants to do, knowing what your unconscious wants to do. We're all running around these big inflated egos, head, mental trip creatures. We're running around making these decisions as if we're in control, trying to control everything. And underneath that, the form is living. And the form has the intelligence to know what it wants. There's different ways of listening to it. So the purpose of this overview reading is to go over the overview of your unique configuration, of your design. And this is shown in what's called a body graph. And the body graph is a visual representation or a map of the mechanics of how you function in the world, including how you interact with people, where you're open, where you're not, what parts of you can trust and what parts you cannot trust. Because our whole lives, we've been trusting what isn't us and running away from what is us. We've been trusting what they call the not self in human design, which is not you. It's those aspects of the chart that are open, that are receptive, that take in the others. And then we've identified with them and said, this is me, I am this. And we trust it, and we suffer. And we meet resistance, and we get worn down, we get unhealthy. We don't meet the people we're supposed to meet. We don't go to the places we're supposed to go to. We don't have the experiences we're supposed to have. We don't see the things we're supposed to see, because we're making mental decisions that are guiding us with our mind to places that are not correct for us. So when you're looking at your body graph, you'll see that there are 9 centers, and that the centers can be either defined or undefined. They can be colored in, or they can be blank. When they're colored in, that is you. That is a consistent aspect of who you are. That is a consistent mechanic. It's consistently available. That yellow diamond in the middle, that G center, the center of identity and direction, that's consistent for you. You have a powerful sense of direction. You can point others. You can give them direction. That throat with its channels connected from the G center, that powerful defined voice with its consistent, reliable way of expressing itself. The spleen, the triangle on the left, the defined spleen with its active immune system, with its fixed sense of well-being and safety and security. And the root at the bottom, the defined root with its ability to withstand pressure. Someone asks you, is that going to be done Friday? You say, maybe, because you're not going to hurry up for them. It's the undefined root that's always in a hurry. Defined root, it's going to resist being pressured, resist being made to hurry up. It's great at doing things at the last minute, because it's able to enjoy itself even when it has a lot on its plate. Now the thing is, if I describe the aspects of your chart that are you, it's been my experience anyway, that when I describe this to people, they go, okay, cool, okay. Like, first of all, we don't really see it that much because it's how we affect other people. It's just how we impact them. So having a defined root, you make other people work faster. You make other people hurry up. You pressure other people to get things done quicker, right? And you might not realize this at all. It's completely unconscious. It's automatic. There's nothing you're saying. It's just you standing there. You go up to the cafe and the barista suddenly hurries up and they say, I'm so sorry that I kept you waiting. They just immediately feel that tinge of adrenaline, that tinge of pressure, right? You activate their fuel. But again, when I tell people, this is who you are, this is your chart, this is what's consistent in you, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, got it. And, it's not that exciting to us. So, it's incredibly important to know our inner authority and what to trust within us. But this is not really where the dilemmas are. The dilemmas are in the not-self. They're in the undefined centers. They're in the openness in the chart. This is where people's ears really perk up. When you start talking about the problems they run into time and time and time again. Because your defined centers don't really cause problems. Your defined centers aren't a dilemma. They're just operating. They're operating in a consistent way. You have consistent access to your splenic awareness, your intuitive awareness in the moment of what's safe and what's dangerous. And you walk into a dangerous place and the hair stands up the back of your neck. It's your body telling you that's bad, Or you can hear an inner whispered voice from the spleen. Turn left. Take that exit. Go down that street, whatever it is. Right? You have access to that as a consistent thing. You have consistent access to your G center, to your sense of direction. So it's not even really an issue. It's not even really a question. It's not like you go around going, I know exactly who I am and where I'm going to go. No, it's like you don't even think about who you are or even think about where you're going to go. It's autopilot. It just works. It's not a dilemma. The undefined G center, they're the ones freaking out all the time. They're the ones going, where do I belong? Where do I really belong? Who am I really? So you look at the openness in the chart, that's where the dilemmas are. And realize that the openness can also be the greatest wisdom. So what happens is, there's a process of deconditioning that happens when you start following your strategy and authority. When you understand the mechanics of how you're designed, and you start to operate under those mechanics, and give up control of making mental decisions. And what happens is, as you do that, like layers of an onion, you become aware of the mechanics of the openness in your chart. It starts to peel back. And over time, this is where you become wise. You become really wise about these things. You have defined G center, so it's not a dilemma for you who you are and where you're going. Someone with undefined G center can spend their entire lives feeling, who am I? But once they stop searching, once they stop trying to find that, which is a mental decision-making thing, once they surrender and let the mechanical process take over, suddenly they become really wise. They become wise about other people's identities, about what identity is, how it works, who is a good guide and who isn't a good guide. All these things. So it's the same for you. As long as you're making mental decisions, that openness is going to lead to suffering. It's going to be a dilemma. It's going to lead to resistance. And as soon as you surrender and allow your inner authority to make the decisions for you, at that point, the openness becomes a place to watch. You simply watch, and you see what happens, and your mind is no longer doing double duty. It doesn't have to keep an eye on things and make decisions for you. It's off the hook. It can simply watch and it can see. You are a projector. The projector is a very special type in a number of ways. It's the most recent type to evolve in our evolution, and it's also at the top of the hierarchy in terms of its position in the overall development of humanity as a species. The projector is here to guide. It's here to guide people. And the way it does this is by connecting or plugging in to the right people. So it has to be the correct person for you to connect to be able to guide them. So the projector guides, but it doesn't do so willy-nilly. It doesn't do so the way the manifestor guided, quote unquote. The manifestor was the old top of the hierarchy for thousands and thousands of years. The manifestor was the one who led humanity in the direction that it's gone in building up society and building up culture. You could imagine a manifestor pharaoh guiding or leading all of the generator slaves to build the pyramids. And the manifestor did that by initiating them, by saying, follow me, by telling them, by informing them, I'm building a pyramid, and basically by directing them. And the projector does not do this at all. The projector, it's a funny thing. It's like the projector has to be invited before it can control somebody. That's my little joke about it. Hey, you're welcome to control my life. No, I'm not saying that the projector is interested in controlling, but that there's a very different dynamic now where the way the nine-centered being, which evolved in 1781 from the seven-centered being that we were, before that. But when you see the nine centers in the body graph, realize this is a new construct. This is our new evolutionary design. And the way the nine-centered being is designed is that the projector is able to guide them, to plug into them, to give them direction, particularly to give direction to generators. Because what that direction is the direction that their sacral energy goes into. So the sacral center is the life force of the planet. It's the vitality of the planet. And generators are the most vital people on the planet. They are the vital people that are essentially producing that vitality and that have that energy to do things like build the pyramids. But generators are basically blind when it comes to where their energy is going and where it should be going and what they're putting energy into. They don't really realize what they're putting energy into, and they're like a fish in water who doesn't necessarily know much about the water. Can't study the water. And the projector, who doesn't have a sacral center defined, knows all about that sacral energy, knows all about what's worthwhile or not to put energy into. So the projector guides the generators who they plug into or plug into them. The projector does this through asking questions. And this is not something that the projector has to think mentally. What question do I ask them? What am I supposed to say? Do I have to? It's not contrived. It's not a contrived, manipulative, mental thing. The projector will simply naturally ask the right questions to the right person if they end up in that correct situation. So when the projector is following their strategy and authority and they find the right people, that's where the magic happens. So I just want to give one example of how this works from a personal story from my life. I went to my doctor, my naturopath, who is 75 years old and brilliant, and he humored me and he allowed me to verify that he's a projector. He wasn't entirely sure of his birth time, so there's a chance he's not a projector, but I'm going with, I think he is, because there were projectors born on that day. So when I'm talking to him, first time, I talk for about half an hour about all my problems. And I'm a generator, right? So theoretically, according to the system, I don't really know where to put my energy. And the projectors guide me where to put my energy, right? But I'm not thinking about this at all. I'm just thinking about, I've had health problems. So I say, oh, well, I have trouble sleeping, and I've been experiencing some TMJ pain, and I've been, I'm like listing various health problems. Kind of just random stuff, right? Kind of random. Of course, he's a naturopath, so he's going to synthesize all this into something holistic, which, by the way, naturopaths and holistic health, according to human design, are for those with the undefined spleen. So you have defined spleen, so theoretically, that wouldn't work for you. Things like homeopathy and herbalism and holistic health, you would actually be much, much, much better off going to traditional doctors, having surgery, taking stronger medicine, stuff like that, over the counter, But in my case, well, and also the other thing would be that, so in your case, you would be better off treating individual symptoms as they arise. In my case, the whole system has to be treated because I have undefined spleen. So it doesn't work for me to just treat a particular symptom. So anyway, I'm at my naturopath, and for half an hour, I'm telling him this litany of complaints, and I'm just going through and all the things I've put so much energy into about my health. And then he says to me, let's see, what's the best question? He goes, first he says, tell me about your anger. And I say, what anger? Which is kind of hilarious if you think about it. And then he says, when was the first time you were angry? And I don't have anything to say. And I ask him to clarify, and he doesn't really say anything else. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? And he's like, says the same thing again, like the first time you were angry. And I start to try to mentally work it out, and I can't. And I just basically say, I don't know. And then we finish up the rest of the appointment, and that question circulates in my brain for the next 3 weeks. And every day or two, something new comes up. And it's like that question works its way through my body and systematically brings up all of my early anger, like every experience in my life from being a little child, that I can remember anyway. Everything I can remember, just slowly, like layers of an onion, it's just like retracing that whole thing and working through it, and something's happening, something deep within is being resolved. And I'm not thinking about all the other health complaints that I came to him with. My energy is no longer there. My energy has been guided somewhere else. So this is what guiding is. The single question that completely shifts the other person's focus and works on them and like changes the rudder of their ship, so to speak, and sends them on a different trajectory. So the projector-generator relationship is powerful. It's a powerful relationship. And generators give so much back to projectors, or they can, because of the conditioning. Projectors are here to get the correct conditioning. What conditioning means is essentially how we influence each other through our aura. If you sit in somebody's aura, you sit within, say, a 5-foot radius of them, you're basically consuming them. You're basically, you're taking in part of their body, the invisible part of their body. But nevertheless, that aura, that auric contact, you're taking in this energy from them, and it's influencing you. And so if somebody's really frustrated, you feel that frustration. You just sit next to them, and that frustration is going to make you frustrated. If somebody's really emotional, you're going to take in that emotional energy. And if they're really happy, you're going to be bouncing off the walls. And if they're really sad or down or bored or suffering in pain, you're going to be lower than their lowest low, because you amplify that energy. So again, this is how the open centers work. Any of your open centers, you're going to amplify. So you amplify that sacral energy from them. You amplify that solar plexus emotional energy from them. And for the projector, it's so important they get the correct conditioning. So you need to be around generators who are deeply satisfied in life. You're going to feel great. It's going to be the right conditioning for you. So it's a beautiful reciprocal relationship. And because of how important the projector-generator relationship is, and in general, projectors' relationships to other people, I always advise projectors when they're learning human design to run charts for everyone in their life and to learn right off the bat about partnership analysis, about connection charts. So what you're doing is you're not only studying and learning about your chart, you are learning about their chart too. And you're putting the charts together and you're seeing how you connect with them, and you're essentially learning to notice the interpersonal dynamics between you and that other person. Because this is a gift that the projector has, and this is very important for them to understand. The other people are the most important thing in the projector's life, meaning who you surround yourself with, who you allow into your life, who you're in close auric contact with, who you're guiding, who you're being conditioned by. And the projector is made for one-on-one. They're just made for one-on-one. If you spend time with two other people, you spend an afternoon with them, going to the park, by the end of the day, one of them's going to hate you. They're going to hate you because they're going to feel left out in the cold, in the ice. Because the projector is meant to plug in. So the projector is basically either in a state of not being plugged into anybody, in which case they're feeling bitter and they're feeling unrecognized, they're feeling worthless and pointless, and why the heck am I even here, and invisible, and all these things. Or they're plugged into somebody and they're feeling appreciated and recognized and validated, and they're getting what they want. But those two states, right? The projector goes out with two generators, say, and they're out and about, and as long as those two generators are ignoring the projector, or not really, or trying to include the projector but not really recognizing them or noticing anything, that projector is going to feel basically invisible. Feel like, what's the point? Why am I even here? Then one of the generators, say generator A, says to the projector, I love your coat. That coat's amazing. And the projector lights up. Wow, that generator noticed something about me. Now, maybe it's just a coat. It's a minor one. It's like a tiny minor recognition. They're not like recognizing what's deep in your soul, but it's like at least a little bit of something. So then you start to communicate with generator A. Well, it starts to build up, and maybe generator A starts to recognize and notice really deep things within you, or maybe there's even an instantaneous thing where it's not about something superficial like a coat at all. It's not like they're just complimenting you, they're actually recognizing, you feel this mutual recognition of them, you recognizing them, recognizing you, and it's something, I watched it happen just the other day. It started with a couple compliments and a couple noticing, wow, you have great hair, or this or that, but then it it turned into really quickly, wait, you know people at that, I know those people too, and didn't you feel like that was how they were in this situation? And suddenly there's these amazing connections between the two people where they're both sharing like that they've had the same kinds of experiences and had some of the same kinds of feelings about those experiences, and there's this deep connection of like, wow, this person really gets me. This person understands me at a deep level. Like, this person's a kindred spirit. And I've had projectors also say how unrecognized they felt when they've been flattered for something they don't care about. I know a projector who's a barista who was told, this is the best coffee I've ever had. And the projector felt bitter and unrecognized, and what the heck am I doing with my life? I don't want to be recognized for being the best barista in Seattle, I want to be recognized for who I really am, for who I am inside. So recognition is such an interesting thing, but going back to the scenario, generator A is going to say, in this case, start recognizing that projector. And immediately, the projector, it's a mechanical process, without even thinking about it, is going to lock in to generator A. And in the back of their head, they're going to be, oh, I'm ignoring generator B, I better make sure they're okay. And they're going to try to switch out, but the more they lock in with generator A, they're not going to be able to connect to generator B. And pretty soon, I saw this happen the other day, it builds up, and this projector had locked in so completely with this generator. They were talking like nobody else existed. And, one of my friends was out on the deck, and he was just completely ignored by them, and he wanted to talk to both of them, but he couldn't get into the conversation. He was completely isolated. He was standing there on his phone. Finally, he started smoking a cigarette, and the projector, without even looking at him, kind of for a second just said, can I have that? And then I kept talking, and then wanted a drag of the cigarette. So my friend passed the projector the cigarette. She started smoking it, and set it down. And that was that, and just forgot about it, and forgot about him, and forgot about it, because so involved and so locked in. So people can so in that situation I was talking about of generator A and B and the projector, generator B is going to feel like chopped liver. Generator B is going to feel like dog food, just totally left out, iced out, and I'm not important at all. And these two are really staring deeply into each other's souls, right? But I'm out of here. But generator A is going to feel like $1 million because they're going to feel like they're the only person in the world. If you want to know the most narcissistic buzz you get, it's from a projector really locking into you, because projectors know how to recognize others too, and they know how to see others in a very special way. I kind of joke that projectors have X-ray vision, and sometimes people can feel actually penetrated and frightened and vulnerable and naked from that. When the projector looks at them, the other person can feel like there's no escape, there's no hiding, and that can be really scary. But it can also be exhilarating and thrilling, and it can feel really, really good. But here's the thing, people can get hooked on that feeling from the projector. And just because, I don't mean to say that recognition and plugging in always happen at the same time. They don't. I was giving an example of where recognition led to that plugging in. So that would be like a correct thing. That would be the correct way for it to work. I was giving an example of under ideal circumstances, the projector feels recognized, and then they plug in with that person, and they get into this mutual recognition. And that's really good. But there's a bad version too, where the projector does not feel recognized, but they still plug into that person. They plug in because they're driven to, because the temptation, because the allure, because the other person has something that they want, that they feel they need, that they feel is missing in their life. Because it's, with an undefined solar plexus, that solar plexus is going to be really tempting. So that other person may be full of excitement and passion and might be sexy and cool, and you plug into them because of those reasons, because they have such a strong magnetic draw on that undefined solar plexus because of their defined solar plexus, right? The solar plexus is the emotional center. It's all about excitement and passion and sexuality, and it's really enjoyment and pleasure. I mean, it can also be about pain and boredom and all those things too, but this is the world that it works within, right? And so the projector is not always drawn correctly to the correct other, right? In fact, it's really rare. The example I was giving is kind of the ideal of the projector connecting correctly to someone who recognizes them. But in the case where they're not being recognized, they might still plug in, and then they have a really hard time getting out of it. Projectors have a hard time ending the conversation, hard time unplugging. And in that case also, where it's not the correct person, that other person still feels like they're the only one in the world, like they have so much attention being paid to them, like they're so special. And so then they get hooked on that, and they get hooked on the projector. So the projector can have these friends who don't really recognize them, who don't really appreciate them for an individual, and yet every time something goes wrong, they call up that projector friend, to process, because they love the attention that they're receiving. They love the feeling of being the only person in the world for that projector. They love how much that projector is going to connect to them and make them feel really good. But the projector ends up feeling bitter about the whole thing, because the projector is like, I'm replaceable. You just want a projector. You don't want me. You want anyone, I'm totally replaceable. You're saying that you want my advice on this life problem you're having. You don't really care about my advice. You just want to complain about it. And you want someone to listen and pay attention to you. And so this is a dynamic that projectors get into, where the people in their life come to rely on them and get hooked on that feeling they get of being the only person in the world when the projector is talking to them. And they get totally hooked on that feeling, and they end up using the projector. And this is a shame. This is, this is a regrettable occurrence that is far too common. And the way to avoid this from happening is really for that projector to follow their strategy and authority. So that strategy is to wait for the invitation, to wait to be invited, to make sure you're feeling recognized, to have that recognition, and you have that formal invitation. Like, the person literally spells out, like, you're welcome to give me your advice if you want. And when they do that, and they recognize you and they appreciate you, and you feel recognized, not like the barista who's like, and then they said that I made the best coffee in Seattle and I just wanted to leave, That's not recognition, right? Because even if it is recognition for some people, for this particular barista, it was not, right? So you have your own criteria for recognition, and we'll go into that in a moment, because there's all different kinds of recognition, but you have your own thing that makes you feel validated, and you feel recognized, and you feel seen. And when those boxes are all ticked, when those boxes are checked, when you've been invited, that's your strategy, right? Then your authority is the spleen. And that authority of your spleen is going to respond in a split second, and it's going to respond in a whisper, and it's going to respond basically as a final veto power of, even you're feeling good about it, but that authority tells you something's wrong, it's wrong. If that authority gives you hair in the back of your neck standing up, then don't do it. If it tells you it's dangerous, don't do it. That splenic authority is ultimately your authority. And so if you follow those two things, that waiting to respond to the invitation that comes from someone who recognizes you, and your spleen says go time, then you're going to connect to the right people. You're going to be surrounded by the right people. You're going to be getting that right conditioning in your life. You're going to be guiding these people, and you're going to find a lot of success in this life. So the next things I would like to cover are your profile, which is the 3-5, the Martyr heretic. And then I would like to talk a little bit about your channels and your definition, which is split definition. And then we'll go into the not self themes of the centers. Your profile, the 3-5. The 3-5 is a conscious third line. There are 6 total lines, and I won't go into all the details of it, but The lines are essentially part of an evolutionary process where you can think of the first line as the foundation, the beginnings. The second line is putting things into practice and living them out. The third line is a verification phase, seeing for yourself, trying it out. None of this will be taken at face value. None of this should be taken at face value. And as a third line, it's up to you to see what works and what doesn't. Third lines are natural skeptics. Third lines are naturally pessimistic that things aren't going to work. And that's good. It's good that you take things in a pessimistic way. You might not always want to share that pessimism with others, but the way you take things in, you're designed to take them in with a certain amount of nothing ever works right. Because it doesn't. At least not for you. The third line is here to make a lot of mistakes and to have a lot of trial and error and to see what works and what doesn't. So the best thing I can tell a third line is to share your mistakes. Don't be ashamed of your mistakes. Don't worry about your mistakes. Share them. If you find out something doesn't work, tell people it doesn't work. If you tried something and it fails miserably, tell people it failed miserably. That's okay. That's what this is. This is how scientific progress happens. This is how evolution happens. This is how mutation happens. But that third line is nicknamed the Martyr. One of its keynotes is the Martyr, and it can end up martyring itself. It can be the one. Everyone's working on a job, and they really don't like the boss, and they don't like the draconian totalitarian order, and it's the third line that stands up and does the Jerry Maguire moment and says, I'm out of here. The third line martyrs themselves to raise the alarms. Or scientists or doctors are trying out new medicine. It's the third line who has the side effects. So the third line is actually very resilient because they're constantly coming up against mistakes and problems and things not working and things breaking. The third line can even enjoy it. They're the kind of type that can actually take some sort of glee when things fail spectacularly. They can handle that anarchy. They can handle the chaos. They're here to tear things down, but not necessarily to build back up anything in its place. They're here to find what doesn't work, but not necessarily to have the solution, right? With the fifth line unconscious, you have a heretical unconscious. Your unconscious is going against the grain, and it is ready to challenge, but it is also going to naturally guide you to be in crisis situations. And not only will you be in those crisis situations, but other people are going to expect you to have the solution to those. They're going to trust you, and they're going to expect you to have something practical to give them. And if you do, great. But so often with the 3-5, what ends up happening is, you enter into those crisis situations only for that third line to take over and say, well, I just want to experiment. I just want to screw around. I just want to see what happens. I just want to play with it. I just want to mess around and break stuff, And so that fifth line gives people the impression. And the thing is, because it's unconscious, you can be blindsided by it. You can be blindsided by the expectations others have on you. They can have these huge expectations, and you end up going, I didn't know you expected that. You didn't tell me you expected that of me. How was I supposed to know, right? So we all benefit from integrating our unconscious line, from realizing our unconscious in our profile. Every profile benefits from becoming more aware, giving more due to its unconscious. So the third line, all it wants to do is try things out, see what works, see what doesn't, test it out. Really test it. Oh, you say this thing's really well made? Let me see how well made it is. What happens when I do that? Oh, you say this car can take corners really well? Let's see what happens when I turn it like this. It just wants to try it out. And that fifth line unconscious is a very, very different thing. You are designed at the physical level, at the unconscious level, to be able to handle crisis, to be able to enter into crisis, to deliver practical provisions in revolutionary times, practical help, practical guidance during times of crisis. So it's good to do that. It really is. It'll get you far in life to do that. The thing is, because it's unconscious, it doesn't usually work that way. So you get a job and you're going in there and the boss is thinking, here's someone who's going to solve all the problems we have. We've been really inefficient. We have all these problems. We haven't been able to hit our markers or hit our goals. Here's someone who can save the day. Things are getting to a crisis point. This person can save the day. 2 months go by. The boss says, well, what have you found out? Well, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, that other thing doesn't work, and you found everything wrong. Because that's what the third line does. It finds what's wrong with things. It breaks things. It said, well, I tried doing it this way and that whole thing fell apart. Well, I tried taking in this kind of order and nobody could keep up with it. Well, I tried that and we had 2 days of being offline. Trying all the different things that break the whole flow of the system and show where the system is weak and show where it doesn't have a strong foundation and show where it needs to be broken down and started over from scratch. And that's all really valuable information. It is. That third line does it. But that's not what they expect. With that fifth line, they expect a solution. And if you don't give them that solution, they're going to be disappointed. And they're going to burn you at the stake. This is the heretic aspect. You're going to get a bad reputation. They're going to tell everybody they expected you to come in and solve the problems, and instead you came in and broke everything and told them everything that was wrong with it, even though that's really valuable information. So this is the thing to realize. The 3-5 can get so deeply pessimistic because with all of those expectations being put on them to solve things and to give practical advice and practical help and practical solutions, what they're really here to do is to experiment, to see what happens, to experiment, to make mistakes. So again, what I say to the third line, share your mistakes. That's all. You go for a run and you go smack into a wall, and being a third line, you're so resilient, you pick yourself up and climb over the wall and keep running. Tell people, because otherwise someone is going to run on that same trail the next day and they're going to run into that wall and they're not going to be a third line, so they're not going to have that ability to pick themselves back up after. So this is what the third line is here to do. They're here to find what doesn't work, tell people about it. They're here to make mistakes and tell people about it. They're the been there, done that type who tell everything that didn't work so other people don't have to make those same mistakes. The third line does. Other third lines will still have to. Someone tells you all about the mistakes they made, you go right ahead and make the exact same mistake. Because the third line has to see for themselves. This is just like a scientist, right? A scientist is like, well, some other scientist got this result. Let's see what happens when I do it. I have a friend who's a 3-5 who said, I'm working on a website and I really want to connect this kind of a back-end database to that kind of a front end, and I'm going to do it on this sort of platform. Is that going to work? And I said, no, there's no chance that'll work. It'll never work. Nobody else does it that way. That's ridiculous. Why don't you do this instead? And my friend was like, 3 weeks later, my friend goes, well, you're right, it didn't work. I tried for 3 weeks and it didn't work, and here's why it didn't work, and everything failed and all fell apart and broke and it doesn't work. It's like, okay, well, you saw for yourself. But that's what the third line is here to do. It's here to make those mistakes, to see for itself. And with the fifth line, people are always going to be projecting their expectations on you. They're going to be hoping you can help them in some practical way. And they're going to put those expectations and they're going to talk about you, and you're going to get a reputation based on that. All right, I want to talk a little bit about your channels and definition, then we'll go to the not self centers. So you have the 2838. This is the channel of struggle. This is a channel where you have the energy to fight for things, and you know what to fight for. But it's a struggle, and you make other people struggle too. And struggle is not bad. We think of struggle as a negative thing. I would never finish some of the harder things that have been in my life to finish if I didn't have 2838s in my life, because they galvanize me and energize me to struggle. If you're working on a book, you want a 2838 around, because writing a book is a struggle. And you have to struggle, and not everyone's designed to struggle. So some people are not going to naturally be able to struggle. Martin Luther King had this channel. What if he wasn't willing to struggle? Gandhi had this channel. What if he wasn't willing to struggle? What if he wasn't willing to fight for a higher purpose? Because that's what this is about. This is about having the energy to fight for something that gives you purpose, something more than food and sex and creature comforts. This is something that gives your life purpose. And you're willing to take a risk for it too. 28 is the risk taker. It's the game player. It's the gambler. You're willing to take a risk for something that gives you purpose. But the thing is, you also have to realize with this 2838, these are the people that play chicken and don't turn. You're designed to be stubborn. And a lot of 2838s don't realize how stubborn they are because they say, my whole life, everyone else is always so stubborn with me. Why are other people so stubborn? You bring it out of them. You're bringing that stubbornness out of them. When people are stubborn with you, unless they're 2838 too, chances are it's because you're bringing it out of them. And so realize that you don't have to fight for everything. You only have to fight for what gives you purpose. Because I see 2838s getting stuck in this stubborn thing where they're stubbornly arguing over any old thing. And it's related to those not self themes. So with that undefined heart, stubbornly arguing over trying to prove their value to people, prove their self-worth, things like that, with the undefined ajna, stubbornly trying to prove they're certain about something. Those things are not worth proving. What's worth proving are the things that bring you purpose, the things that give your life purpose. And you also get recognition through this. People can recognize, not recognizing your stubbornness per se, but recognizing, it is stubbornness at one level, but recognizing that energy to fight, having the energy to fight, having the energy to not back down, to not compromise, to not let others interfere with you, and ultimately recognizing how empowered you are, and as a side effect, how you empower others. How you empower others to be empowered in themselves because you're not letting people interfere with you and you're not budging. That 31-7 can be recognized for your leadership. You might not even realize it in yourself that you have this amazing potential for leadership, this ability to logically express in a way that others can follow, and this ability to come up with formulas to express yourself. And that 3313, with its amazing ability to gather people together, with its ability, is part of the collective process. These are both collective channels. So you have this amazing ability to communicate from your G center, from yourself, and it's connected to the throat. So you can communicate collectively. You can reach strangers. You can reach the other, and you can share your experiences with them. And you can share your logic and your patterns with them, and you can share your opinions with them, and you can lead them, and you can guide them through your voice. And so you have these channels, and then your definition is split definition. So you'll notice when you're looking at your chart that it's split definition. It's in two separate areas. You have that 2838 connecting the spleen to the root, but then you also have the throat to the G center through the 31-7 and the 33-13. So you'll notice that these are two separate areas. Now, when you're split definition, I always say it's good to be around people on a semi-regular basis, or to find a place where you can be private and public, or to essentially semi-regularly get those splits connected. You don't want to get hooked on the same person bridging those splits, but you want to be around other people enough that you can digest information, because you will have realizations and epiphanies, and you will connect these two different parts of yourself. This struggling splenic root part will connect to your ability to express yourself in a logical and experiential way, and to share your memories, and to share your ideas, and to share your opinions. Those things will come together and they will connect, and you'll be able to digest information. Because when you're single definition, that information, when everything's connected in one area, that information comes in and it's digested fully. But when you're split definition, you have two different things going on at once, and it needs to be connected. Of course, it doesn't always need to be connected, and that's the thing. You don't want to get hooked on one particular person or a couple of people bridging that split. And you also don't want to get stuck in the feeling that there's something wrong with the split, because you are designed to have these two different parts. But at the same time, split definitions are the only ones who are really designed for relationship, and they're designed to be wise about relationship. And when it's a wide split, when there's more than one gate necessary to connect the split, here we have the theme of denial and blame. We have the theme of, I don't have the problem, everyone else has the problem. We have the theme of, see, for example, that 4816, totally open, that channel. Nobody else really has the skills. I don't have the problem. I got the skills. Nobody else does. And I'm a deep person. It's nobody else. That everyone else is superficial and shallow. They're not deep. or that 57 to the 20. I'm intelligent, and also that 57 to the 10. I'm intelligent, and I know who I am, and I know what I'm doing. Nobody else knows what they're doing, and nobody else knows who they really are and knows why they're doing it. Because that 20 is like doing in the moment. Gate 10 is about who you are and your identity. And that 57 is intelligence or knowing. So you can see that when you have a wide split like this, there's a lot of feelings like, I don't have the problem, other people have the problem. I know who I am, other people don't know who they are. I know what I'm doing, others don't know what they're doing. I have the skills, they don't. I have the depth, they're superficial. And you can see how this works. And it can be a real trap. Because the trap can be that you feel like something is wrong with the other. That the right other is not in your life, that the others are to blame. And, the answer to this isn't to take personal responsibility. This isn't some moralistic thing. I mean, the deconditioning is all about getting over these narratives so that you can trust your real strategy and authority, your inner strategy and authority, not some mental strategy, not mental authority, right? You're trusting your splenic response. You're trusting your strategy of waiting to be invited and of feeling that recognition. And so all of this, getting over the denial and the blame, is not so you'll take personal responsibility and be like, wait a minute, I really don't have the skills. I really don't know what I am. Or who No, none of that. It's simply to realize that those are distractions. Those are distractions from your strategy and authority. Those are distractions in your decision-making process. Because you're going to find yourself making a decision saying, I can avoid bitterness if only I get the skills and I have the depth, because nobody else does. Can't depend on them to have it. And I can avoid bitterness as long as I know what I'm doing, as long as I know who I am, because nobody else is going to help me find out who I am or what I'm doing, and nobody else seems to know what they are doing either. So all of this is about getting through that, getting over that mental decision-making of, I can avoid bitterness if. I can avoid bitterness if I know what I'm doing. I can avoid bitterness if I develop those skills and depth. That's what this is about. There are so many aspects to human design. It really is a feast. As I said earlier, it can be a feast for the mind. It gives the mind so much to chew on, so much to notice, so much to observe, so much to watch. But ultimately, it is about strategy and authority. It is about, in your case, honoring your spleen. So if someone walks up to you and they ask if you want to go to lunch, and your spleen just twitches. You get a muscle twitch, you get hair on the back of your neck, you get goosebump, it can communicate in all different ways. Or even a quiet voice. It might just go, no. And who knows why the spleen made that decision? So you tell them no. You trust that splenic response. The spleen is connected to the immune system. Maybe that person just had a cold. Who knows why? But that spleen is going to know instantly what is correct for you. More than the mind could know if it spent a year thinking about it, right? That spleen is going to instantly know what is good for you, and it's going to answer. But here's the thing, the inner voice of the spleen is like 20 times quieter than the inner monologue of the mind. So the mind is going to say, well, I can't tell them no, because then they're not going to like me anymore, and then they're not going to invite me anymore, and then I'm not going to, and it's going to have this whole monologue, If I tell them no, what will they think of me? If I tell them no, I might hurt their feelings. If I tell them no, and it's going to, or connecting to those splits I was talking about. If I tell them no, I'm not going to get access to the depth that I need. If I tell them no, I'm not going to develop the skills that I need. If I tell them no, I'm going to be bitter. So that's ultimately what it comes down to, is that the mind is going to have this carrot and the stick of, I can avoid bitterness as long as I make decisions according to this mental strategy. And that's just not true. It's just not true. You avoid bitterness when you follow the spleen. And so it's about honoring that spleen and listening to that spleen and letting that spleen make the decisions. And really, it starts with noticing it, but once you've noticed it, it's about acting on it. Because the thing is, the spleen, it's going to tell you once in the moment. And it never repeats itself. If you miss it, if you miss that little twitch in the moment, that's it. That's it. If you're driving down the freeway and your spleen goes, take that exit, and you don't, you hesitate, then you're not going to have been following the spleen, and you don't know where that spleen would have guided you. Who knows why the spleen wanted to take that exit, right? We don't really know. I mean, it's not a rational, logical thing. It's a bodily intelligence that has been developed over millions of years. We share, the spleen is like the cold-blooded intelligence we share with mammals, and we share with other mammals, with reptiles, with birds, with fish. They all have this splenic intelligence. And so it's a vast, vast, far superior intelligence when it comes to making decisions, and who knows why it's making those decisions. But it does, and it tells you in the moment, and it tells you in a twitch, or in a, in a muscle spasm, or in a, different people have different things. One person told me, when I described the spleen, he said, well, I sometimes get a feeling, and sometimes I get a twitch on my left side, other times I get a twitch on my right side, like a muscle twitch. Other people have described it as being like goosebumps, or being like the hair in the back of your neck, or other people, it's often described as a whisper, as a very quiet voice that just tells you only once. So whatever the spleen is for you, it's something for you to notice and to honor. And so you're waiting, and you're waiting to be invited, and you're waiting for that recognition, and you're letting that spleen guide you and validate you in your decision-making process. And this is what it's all about. Human design is a feast for the mind, but it's ultimately, all of this mental stuff is there for the mind to relax a little bit and to give the mind something to do, so the mind can watch, so the mind can really see and start to trust that it's okay to let go of that decision making, so that when someone asks you if you want to do something, you don't go into that mental process that you've gone into all your life, that everyone goes into because it's such a homogenized mental world out there. And instead of going into that, you do what is you and what makes you become more you, and you can't predict it in advance. You don't know what you're going to do, but that spleen just spontaneously tells you what is correct. It says yes or no, or it tells you what to do as this inner knowing or inner intuition. So there's so much more to human design. This is an overview reading, so I'm not going to go into everything else, but just as one example, there's an aspect of human design called variable, and you're quad right in the variable, which is a really, really, I would almost say, futuristic variable to have. And what it means is that the way you're designed is to be very receptive to information when you're paying attention. And it's not the same as focusing, because you're not focusing on any one thing. You're allowing yourself to be immersed, to be absorbed. And so instead of pattern matching and focusing and kind of zoning out what the other person is saying and then tuning in when they say something interesting, you're designed to take in everything they say with no filter. Either everything or nothing. You're either being attentive, in which case it's a very unfocused, unfiltered way of receiving all of the information, or you're not paying attention, in which case you get nothing from it. And the thing is, when you're quad right, this is pretty rare. This is 1/16 of people have this configuration. There's very special things about how you take in information and how you learn. For instance, when you're in class, it's very important for you never to skip class and to be there for all the classes. And when you're there, to be present and to be paying attention in an unfocused, receptive way, where you're receiving everything and you're not filtering and you're not going, well, this isn't interesting, so I'm going to tune out. Oh, the teacher said something interesting, I'm going to start tuning back in. That's not you. That's how left cognition works. You have what they call right cognition. And with right cognition, and there's a whole reasons behind this, but I mean, you can think of it somewhat similar to left brain, right brain. It's not the same thing, but just it kind of helps to think about it as right cognition being a little more like right brain. And so you're supposed to absorb and take in everything that person says, because you can't make up from studying. But the corollary of this is you're not supposed to study. You're not supposed to go home and sit there and focus and have your goal in mind and have your focused mental effort going, I am going to read all about this thing and I'm going to pattern match and I'm going to sort and filter the signal to noise. You're designed not to filter signal to noise. But there's such a homogenized world out there, we're conditioning all of these quad right people like you to, well, you have to focus and have really heavy focused effort and do a lot of studying. Well, again, that's not what you're designed for. You can get all the information you need from just fully absorbing. Because the thing is, you're in that class, and if you're really paying attention, you're taking in 100% of the information being transmitted by that teacher in that classroom. Someone like me, I have left cognition. I'm taking in like 2% of the information, and I'm zoning out and turning off my mind until some pattern match clicks, and I'm going, oh, okay, that's piquing my interest. Now I'm going to start listening, and I take in a little bit of... Excuse me. So essentially, with quad right, you have a very unique configuration. We won't go into this anymore because I want to wrap up and close on the not self themes of the Undefined Centers. But this is just to say that if any of this information, takes, and if you enjoy this, or if you find it validating, or if you have a positive splenic response to it and your spleen goes, yeah, or I have undefined spleen, so I don't really know how the spleen works. So that's my non-splenic impression of it. But whatever it is, if you like this information, then I would strongly encourage you to continue researching, and you can always reach out to me for more information. And you can find a lot of information online, and there's so many different layers of it. I would recommend studying the charts of people in your life. I find that the projector has a great gift for connection with other people and for knowing how they connect with others, and for experiencing that nuance of that connection. And so looking at partnership analysis, where you essentially look at their chart and you look at your chart and you see how you connect with them, can be so rewarding. I would look into, at some point, it's perhaps not the most important thing in the beginning, but just to gain some clarity, there's an aspect of human design called Incarnation cross, and you're on the Incarnation cross of the unexpected, which people ask me what it means, and I say, well, it's unexpected. I have no way to predict it. It's unpredictable. Things change radically for these people, and they have very unexpected things happen. And just understanding these different layers of dynamic paint a picture, and they help you become more comfortable with really trusting in the process, in the mechanical process of being invited and being recognized, and having that splenic decision making, and really living your life in a way that you're surrendered to that mechanical process, and you're no longer experiencing that strong pull, that attraction to the not self that pulls you in, and that gets you making mental decisions. So in closing, I'm going to go over briefly the undefined centers in your chart. And I'm going to go over the not self themes of those centers. And I'll start by telling you what they are, and then we can kind of synthesize them. Your undefined ego. Do you have something to prove? The undefined ego's not self theme is proving. And I would add that it's also improving. It's trying to prove its worth. It's trying to improve things. The solar plexus. That undefined solar plexus has a theme of avoiding confrontation and truth, of keeping people at arm's length, not rocking the boat. The undefined ajna, pretending to be certain, trying to be certain. Are you trying to be certain? Are you pretending to be certain? the head, the undefined head, thinking about things that don't matter, trying to answer everyone else's questions and solve everyone else's problems, trying to be free from mental pressure. And the root, the undefined root, always in a hurry, always in a, sacral, excuse me. You have defined root. Obviously, we talked about your defined root earlier. I apologize. The undefined sacral, and that undefined sacral is going to not have an internal mechanism to tell it when it's been enough, to tell it when it's done enough, to tell it when it's at its capacity, when it's at its limit. That undefined sacral doesn't know when enough is enough. So the question there, do I know when enough is enough? So we have this overview, and I've gone from strongest to weakest in terms of their impact, because these centers have different degrees of impact, and the strongest impact is the ego. It's always the ego. And so the kernel of the not self decision-making process, the very foundation of that process, is that undefined ego, trying to prove, trying to improve, looking for validation, wanting others to give it love, to give it admiration, to give it approval, to give it validation in order to prop itself up, because it's not sure about itself, it's not sure if it really has value, it's not sure if it really deserves. There can be a deep guilt there, and a deep sense of inferiority, and there can be a deep, I would say, issue around self-esteem. And then from that ego, the next strongest is going to be the solar plexus, which is avoiding confrontation and truth. It's going to be avoiding rocking the boat, avoiding telling anyone. And then the ajna, which is with its theme of going to be certain. The head, with its theme of thinking about things that don't matter. And finally, the sacral, with its theme of not knowing when enough is enough. And so these are the themes in isolation. And what I'm going to do for you for a moment is to tell you some possible syntheses of how these themes come together, some possible ways you can string together these keynotes into narratives. And so, starting with the ego, this is trying to prove itself. This is trying to prove its worth. Well, you don't have anything to prove. You don't. You don't have to prove. There's that not self saying, I can avoid bitterness if only I can prove it to them, if only I can convince them, if only they'll understand that this is what I meant. It's always attesting to what it means. I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry, don't you see? And if only others trust me, and if only, and there's all of this not self, undefined ego. I mean, this is the malaise of the world. 65% of people have an undefined ego. That's 65% of the world going around feeling unworthy, feeling inferior, feeling like they don't deserve the appreciation they do get, and then feeling unappreciated and feeling undervalued. It goes both ways. If somebody does something really nice for you, that undefined ego goes, well, I don't deserve that. I'm not worthy of that. But if somebody's really mean to you, you go, I don't deserve that. I deserve better than that. So that undefined ego can't make up its mind about whether it's being treated too nicely or too poorly. It's skewed, it's distorted. And in your case, it's completely open with no activations, and the channels are completely open. So just like that theme of the wide split, that theme of denial and blame, that's the theme for that undefined ego of, I'll go through the themes here of the ego. The ego is about loyalty, for instance. That channel 4037 is about trust, and it's about loyalty, and it's about support. Well, with the denial and blame, it's, I don't have problems trusting people. Everyone else has problems being trusting. And I keep my promises. I stick to my word. You can trust me. It's nobody else who can be trusted. Everybody else has problems keeping their word. Right? So you can see how it gets into these bizarre double assertions. The same way the ego might feel undervalued and overvalued and insecure about its esteem, there's also this feeling of, I trust everyone else, and they all have problems trusting me. And you know what? I'm a trustworthy person, and they're the ones who aren't trustworthy. They don't keep their promises. So you find these interesting double assertions that go in both directions at once. It reminds me of Freud's joke about the man who borrowed the kettle, the neighbor or something. I forget exactly how it goes. And then he brought it back, and it was broken. And the other guy goes, well, you broke it. And he said something like, I'm going to mess it up, but it was something along the lines of, I didn't borrow it, and then when I had it, I never broke it. So it's something like that. Like, it's not exactly that, but you get the idea that it's this bizarre way that the not self can assert both directions at once. It can say, I'm trustworthy, other people can't be trusted. And I have no problem trusting people. I'm a very trusting person. Other people aren't trusting. And it says this with a straight face, basically. And the whole thing is that this is going to be tying in, again, with that not self theme of avoiding bitterness. So it's going to be, I have to be a trustworthy person or else I'll have bitterness. If I break their trust, I'll be bitter. And because it's looking for that validation, it's looking for that approval, it wants to be liked, it wants to be loved, it wants to be respected and admired. It's going to be, if I break their trust, they won't respect me. If I break their trust, they won't trust me, they won't admire me, they won't love me, and I will be bitter. Then they won't invite me and I'll be bitter. And you can string this together with those channel splits also. If I break their trust, they won't invite me to have those opportunities where I get the depth and the skills I need. If I break their trust, they won't give me the opportunities for experimenting in a way that I can come to know who I am and what I'm doing. So you can string these together in all different ways. But I want to convey that this not self of the undefined ego is really the foundation, not only of your own personal not self mental strategy, which is again trying to pull you away from the mechanical yin form strategy of trusting your spleen. It's the world's. The world has an ego problem. The world has a problem with trying to prove itself, with feeling inferior. And it's going to try to prove anything and everything. The 2145 channel going off the ego to the throat. This is all about control. So here we have, I'm not a controlling person, everyone else is controlling. And my life is out of control, or because it's denial and blame, my life's in control, it's other people whose lives are out of control. They are out of control. They can't control themselves. I can control myself. There's so many ways, permutations and ways of rearranging these keynotes. I mean, this is what's really amazing about it. I realized that the keynotes in human design are like formulas that you can rearrange in all of these significant ways to unlock and give you tremendous power in unlocking and understanding these dynamics. And it's not simply the Barnum effect like you get with cold reading, where you tell somebody something really vague, like you were close to someone and you cared about them and now they're not here, or something like that. It's not like that. It's not vague. It's actually very precise. It's just that these precise keynotes can be rearranged, just like I was doing about trust. I'm trustworthy. I can't trust others. I'm a trusting person. They're not trusting. They don't trust me. It's these kinds of permutations. And it's the same thing when it comes to control. I'm in control of my life. Other people aren't in control. And I'm not a controlling person. Other people are controlling. This is what it comes down to, is that denial and that blame. Gate 21 is also the gate of stamina. So this is, I have enough stamina, it's others who don't have the stamina. They're the ones who don't have the stamina to keep their commitments. They're the ones who don't have the stamina to see things out to the end and stay with them. And, so again, the denial and the blame and feeling like nobody else is going to help you and nobody else is going to be there for you to help you have that stamina in that process. Feeling all alone. The 51 has to do with courage or bravery, where that 51 is going to be about, I have no problem jumping into the void. It's others who are scared to jump into the void. And also, maybe I do have a problem, but then nobody's there to help me. Nobody's there to help give me courage or empower me in that courage. Nobody's there to initiate me into those processes. It's the channel of it's an individual channel about initiating people into essentially themselves away from the tribe. So it's the movement from the tribe to the self. So it might feel that there's a real lack of rites of passage, a lack of being people who will initiate you into yourself. And because these open channels, they feel like it's lacking. They feel like the other is lacking. The other's not there for them. And because across the channel from the 51, you have the 25, the gate of innocence, you might feel like innocence is lacking in others too. You might feel like others lack the innocence. That is to say, they have ulterior motives. They're manipulative. They're always trying to get something else. They don't have pure motives. And so here's the theme of, I have to prove myself. I have to improve myself. I have to stay in control. I have to keep the stamina. I have to be courageous. I have to be trustworthy and keep my promises, because others have disingenuous motives. Others aren't genuine. Others aren't innocent. Others have ulterior motives. Others can't be trusted. Others don't have enough control of themselves or their life to be trusted. That 2644, feeling the need to sell yourself, having the nerve to sell yourself, to put yourself out there, the gate of the egotist. I'm not an egotist. I'll prove to you how much I'm not an egotist. I'll prove to you how much I don't care about proving anything to you. I'll prove to you what a good person I am, what my good intentions are, how little I care about proving anything to you. You can see how twisted this becomes. And underneath all of it is this promise, I can avoid bitterness. I can avoid bitterness if only I can convince them. If only I can prove to them what a good person I am. If only I can improve myself and become a better person, then I can avoid bitterness. I can avoid bitterness as long as I can stay in control. And I can prove to them how little I care about being in control. I can avoid bitterness as long as I have courage. And I can prove to them how courageous I am. And I can convince them. And I can convince them how trustworthy I am. This is what it's doing. And it's all wrapped up. It's wrapped up in that feeling that others aren't there for you, that denial, that blame, that others aren't going to help you get the skills that you need because they don't have the skills themselves. And they're not going to help you develop that depth or find that depth within yourself because they're all superficial. Again, these are the wide split themes. So you see how they combine, right? And you're going to prove to them how much depth you have and prove to them how much talent and how many skills you have. And you're going to prove to them that you know who you are and you know where you're going. Because then they'll like you. Then you'll get validation. Then they'll trust you. Then you'll be invited. Then you won't feel bitterness. It just chains and it chains and it chains and it goes on and on and on and on. And this is all to pull you away from your spleen. It's so simple. It's simple but not easy. It's just the simplest thing. It's trust your spleen. It's wait to be invited. Wait to be recognized. And while you're waiting, you're living your life. You're doing all sorts of things. You're not just sitting there in a state of stasis. You're living your life. You're experimenting. You're in that 3-5 trial and error process. But you're not getting drawn into that not self-bitterness. And then these centers change to wisdom. And suddenly with that ego, when the ego's not wounded and when it's not that hurt, wounded ego of the not self that's always getting offended about things and trying to prove how it's not offended and prove how you can't offend it, but it really is offended about it. When it's not doing that, it can see who is trustworthy or not. It can see who has good evidence or not, who has proven things or not. It can see who has the stamina or not, who has the courage or not. It can see all these things. It's wise to them. But not when it's in control. Not when it's controlling the life. When it's controlling the life, you're going to make decisions based on keeping your promises. Here's the thing. You don't have to keep promises. You don't have to make promises. Every promise you make is a promise to exert willpower that you don't have consistent access to. And so you're making promises and then feeling bad when you can't keep those promises, like New Year's resolutions. I will do this. No, that's not who you are. You don't have to promise anyone anything. Give it a try and you'll see that you'll get through life better than ever with less resistance and feeling better and feeling healthier and smoother if you just don't make those promises, because you have nothing to prove. there's also nothing to improve. You don't have to improve. There's always this feeling of, okay, well now I get it. I just have to improve myself in this way, and this way, and this way. You can even hear all this human design information and go, now I get it. I have to improve myself. I have to get better at not trying to prove myself all the time. No, because that is improving and proving are the same thing. It's proving that you've gotten better. The undefined solar plexus. This is the next one in the hierarchy. And this has to do with how we see other people. And this has to do with keeping other people at arm's length and not letting them see the real us. Because we don't want them to see us, because if they really do see us, they might not like what they see. And besides, it's skewing how we see them. So there's a feeling that they can't handle the truth. They can't handle who you really are. So you're going to show a censored version of yourself. The not-self theme of the undefined solar plexus. Avoiding confrontation and truth. I've had people I've told this to, they say, well, I don't avoid confrontation. If somebody's harassing my friend, I get right in their face and tell them, back off. Well, that's not what this is. That's more like an undefined ego thing. Because the ego is always sensitive to threat. The ego is deeply related to threat. And so it's very sensitive to threat. And it's going to puff up and say, back off when there's threat. That's not the kind of confrontation I'm talking about here. The solar plexus, when it avoids confrontation and truth, it's avoiding confronting people you care about with painful truths. I can't be in this relationship anymore. I'm going to quit my job. I can't take it when this and this and this happen, and things that are going to possibly hurt their feelings. And because the solar plexus is an awareness center, its distortion has to do with how it sees others. Just like the ego distorts how you see yourself, that solar plexus is going to distort how you see others, and you're going to feel, as not self anyway, they can't handle the truth. It would crush them. It would destroy them. They would be so hurt and so offended, and they can't handle it. So I can't tell them I have to walk on eggshells, and I have to tiptoe around it, and I don't want to rock the boat. And there's a very practical reason for this too. With that undefined solar plexus, you're amplifying others' emotional states. So the practical reason is you don't want to get a big emotional reaction out of them, because you're going to feel it even stronger than they are. So there's this tiptoeing. I don't want to make them angry because they'll make me even angrier. I don't want to make them sad because I have to deal with all this sadness I'm feeling from them, And so that solar plexus is going to be tipping-toeing, and it's going to be looking for people that won't call it out either, because it wants to keep people at arm's length. It doesn't want to let them get too close. It's afraid of intimacy. It's afraid of real intimacy. It's afraid of vulnerability. It's afraid if it doesn't tiptoe around people, like you have gate 22 there. Gate 22 is the gate of the listener. Well, this is about, I have to be a good listener, and I have to be receptive to them. And you can tie it together with the undefined ego. I have to prove to them what a loyal friend and what a good listener I am. And I have to prove this to them, and prove to them how good I am at not confronting them, not calling them out, not calling them on their stuff, and how good I am at not rocking the boat and avoiding, painful situations and topics. And if I prove to them how good I am at not rocking the boat, then they'll talk to me. They'll give me something to listen to. And if I don't do that, I'm going to get the silent treatment. Ooh, this gate 22 activated in the undefined solar plexus, it hates the silent treatment. That silent treatment, if I tell them who I really am, if I show them these things, if I confront them, if I don't censor myself, if I'm not careful with how I come across, then they're going to give me the silent treatment. They're not going to talk to me anymore. And it's all, with the 55 there, it's afraid of emptiness. Then I'll just feel this emptiness. So I better be spirited. I better be enthusiastic. I better be creative. I better be a good listener. I'm saying creative because these are individual gates. So these become part of the themes of how the not-self organizes itself there. And with that 41 pointing to the 30, that undefined, that the unactivated 30 and the undefined solar plexus, that's the fates. So it's going to feel like if I really do open up to them and I really do get close to them, the fates will intervene. Fate will take them away from me. Some terrible accident will happen. When things go too good, it means something bad's about to happen. So I better not let myself get too close. Better not let them get too close. The 36-35, that's all about sexual inferiority complexes, sexual competency, sexual adequacy, because it's the whole gate's open. I don't have any sexual hang-ups, other people do. I don't have any hang-ups at all about that, you know? I don't have any fear of being inadequate, other people do. With the 659 open, I don't have a fear of intimacy, other people are afraid of intimacy. I'm not afraid to be vulnerable, other people are afraid to be vulnerable. And these tie together again, so I'll prove to you how much I'm not scared of intimacy. You can chain all these together. I'll prove to you how I have the stamina and the courage, and I'm trustworthy, and I have the nerve to be vulnerable and to have that intimacy and really listen to you without judging you. Be a really good listener, you know, and I'll prove to you all of these things. So we're getting to this is the very deep part of the not self. And as we move away from this, we go through these layers, and finally we'll end up on the outermost layer, the surface, which is what other people see. Other people aren't going to see this. They're not going to look at you and go, here's somebody trying to prove themselves. No, they're going to look at you and they're going to see that undefined sacral. They're going to look at you and go, here's somebody who cares, because that 27 is about caring. Here's somebody who's available to be responsible, to care about things. Here's somebody who's available more than anything. They're available. They're available to me because that sacral, the undefined sacral, is making itself overly available. Doesn't know when enough is enough, so it says it has energy when it really doesn't. It spreads itself too thin. It makes itself too available. So they're going to see that. They're going to see that gate 3, the individual format. Here's somebody who's good at beginning things, who's good at starting things, who's good at bringing artistic creations off the ground and getting things going, and they have so much caring because of that gate 27, and they're you know, here's a responsible person who knows how to take care of things, and they're available to do it. And they're not going to see that underneath all that is that undefined ego going, feed me, feed me, feed me. I feel bad about myself and I need your validation and approval to feel good, and I think that when I get that, I won't be bitter. But of course it's not true, because the only thing that helps you avoid bitterness really is following your strategy and authority. The only thing that really avoids bitterness is trusting your spleen to guide you to the right people and the right places where you get recognition, where you find that success. But the not self is a hell of a thing. The not self is going to be there every step of the way with its temptations, with its pull. I can avoid bitterness as long as I show them I'm so available for them, and I hide from them that I actually really want their approval, and I want to prove to them how trustworthy I am, and you know, and on and on and on. So that ajna, that undefined ajna, is trying to be certain. You can chain these together, you know. I will prove to you how certain I am of my ability to be a good listener and to not rock the boat and to not offend you. I'll prove to you how certain I am about my ability, going to the head, to answer your questions and to solve your problems and to help you be free of that mental pressure. Because that head is going to be thinking about things that don't matter, and it's going to be trying to be free of that pressure because it really wants to know. You have gate 61, the gate of knowing. So here is a head center that really wants to know, wants to be free of that pressure, so it wants to know. And combined with these others, it's going to prove how certain it is about what it knows. It's going to prove it's certain in its capability to help others know, to be free of that pressure, right? You know, these all chain together with that ajna, that undefined ajna, with the gate 11. This is going to be the gate of ideas. I'll prove to you that I have ideas that'll help you know and help you come to knowledge about things that you're feeling mental pressure about. And I'm going to prove to you that I have plenty of ideas to help you. And these ideas aren't going to be offensive to you. They're not going to rock the boat. They're not going to challenge you. Because again, that undefined solar plexus wants to keep the other at arm's length. The other can't handle it, so I better not really say anything that might offend them or might hurt their feelings. I better keep them at arm's length. And then that sacral, not knowing when enough is enough. I'll prove to you that I'm available to help you know the answers to your problems, that I have plenty of ideas that I'm certain of, and that none of these are going to offend you or be displeasing to you. Right? You see how these all go together. And the rationale, if I can do this, I can avoid bitterness. If I have ideas for people, I can avoid bitterness. If I can be certain, I can avoid bitterness. If I can be free from the pressure of not knowing by actually knowing, then I can avoid bitterness. And it's not true. And as soon as that shift occurs, where you begin the experiment and you begin following your splenic authority and trusting your spleen to make decisions and following your projector strategy of waiting to respond, of waiting to be invited, rather. As soon as you follow those mechanics, you're waiting, you're being invited, you're being recognized. Your spleen is telling you, it's making the decisions. You're hearing it. It only tells you once, so you're hearing it that first time, and you're following it in that split second. Then, all the openness in the chart becomes the potential for wisdom. Then, that head, which is thinking about things that don't matter, is able to know who's inspiring and who isn't. That ajna that is trying to be certain can appreciate open-mindedness and can see things from many different views. That sacral, which doesn't know when enough is enough and is making itself too available, suddenly becomes very wise about sacral energy, can guide the sacral energy of others. It knows who has the energy for things and who doesn't. That ego, undefined ego, knows who has the stamina, who doesn't. That solar plexus, the defined solar plexus needs the undefined solar plexus to tell it, to confront it. It needs that confrontation, but all these undefined solar plexuses are running around not rocking the boat, not wanting to stir things up, terrified that they'll say the wrong thing and offend somebody, and not wanting to confront the person and tell them, just avoiding. And those defined solar plexus, they need the undefined solar plexus, because the undefined solar plexus, when it's wise, it can actually be wise about the emotional states of others. So the undefined solar plexus can say, hey, you shouldn't make that decision right now, because you know what, you seem like you're really angry. And that defined solar plexus will say, wow, I didn't realize I was mad. Or the undefined solar plexus will say, hey, how's it going? You seem like you're a little down about something. What's up? And the defined solar plexus will be like, well, now that you mention it, I didn't really think I was, but I guess I am, So the undefined solar plexus has a tremendous gift. All of these open centers have a tremendous gift when we live out our mechanics, when we live our design, which is to allow them to receive, to not try to give. We're always trying to give. That undefined solar plexus is always trying to give excitement, to give pleasure, to give all these solar plexus experiences, to give happiness. It's supposed to receive these things. That undefined ego, trying to give promises, to give trust and trustworthiness, to give proof, it's supposed to receive these things. So really, at the end of the day, human design is about the deconditioning and giving over, surrendering control. It's realizing there's no choice. That choice, the choice of the mind is an illusion, that the mind thinks it has a choice in all of this. That really what it's about is surrender. It's about surrendering that mental control and giving it over to the body mechanics and really allowing the body to make the decisions, allowing the form to make the decisions through a mechanical process. And it's an incredible journey. And I wish you all the best in that journey.